Nice introduction. It's not getting you out of one amends. My name's Bob Darrell, and I am alcoholic. And only through the grace of a God that I was afraid to believe in, that I've accessed through the 12-step process in the Big Book, good sponsorship, and a persistent and consistent commitment to the primary purpose of helping other drunks. Through that, I haven't had a drink or any mind or emotion-altering substance since October 31st, 1978. And for that I owe you my life. And more than owing you my life, I owe you my freedom, because abstinence without freedom from the bondage of self drives some of us so insane we take our own lives, or we go back to drinking again. And the amazing thing is not that I'm sober a little over 32 and a half years, is that I've found freedom here from the only thing I ever needed, the thing I drank to get freedom from. I want to thank Harris. I got the chance to talk to him many times on the phone, spend a little time with him, and Harris does a lot of service in Alcoholics Anonymous, and he's a doer behind the curtain here and helps a lot of people. And I don't know that the people in Texas really appreciate everything he's done for them. Last time I'll speak here, I'm sure. And I'd like to thank my dear friends Charlie and Katie P. Charlie said he'd give me $5 every time I mentioned his name. Charlie. I think I just been able to buy a new guitar with that. And more importantly, I really want to welcome the new people here. Recovery from this thing, and this thing that we suffer from, is very baffling and confusing if you're like me. A lot of this doesn't make sense. A lot of alcoholism doesn't make sense to me. You know, if you're anything like I am, by the time you get to AA, there's probably been some people getting in your face over the years talking to you about you. You know, I mean, maybe your mother and father were talking to you about you. Maybe your minister, maybe your priest, maybe your parole officer, maybe your boss. You get really bad, maybe your drug dealer's starting to talk to you about you. You get really bad, strangers on the street start talking to you about you. And no matter what words they use, it's kind of the same thing. It's something that doesn't make any sense. Because what they really say to guys like me, in different ways of saying it, is they say, Bob, you're so screwed up. You catch me on a bad day when my defense mechanisms are down, I'll go, yeah, I know. And they'll say, you know why you're screwed up? No, I don't. Well, you're screwed up because you keep getting screwed up. If you didn't get so screwed up, you wouldn't be screwed up. So I'm pretty screwed up. I think, okay, I'm not going to get screwed up. And when I don't get screwed up, I get so screwed up, I got to go get screwed up. And people are saying, you know, you're screwed up. And I go, yeah, I know. You know why you're screwed up? Because I get screwed. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. Because I think alcoholism comes in bags and bottles, and it doesn't. It comes in people. And it is the disease of alcoholism that threatened my life, and I didn't know that. I thought it was an alcohol. I thought if I could just stop that stuff, and I would stop it, and I would stop it, and I would stop it. But there's something wrong with me, and I don't know what it is. But when I'm not stupid. After 4 or 5 treatment centers, I kind of get that I can't take that first drink. I get that. And I'd swear to myself and mean it, I'm never going to touch that stuff again. And 7 or 8 months later, I'm back at it. And you do that once or twice, you're an idiot. You do that over and over and over again, there's something wrong with you. And I didn't understand how it was a level of out of control beyond anything I ever imagined. I always fancied that if I hit a bad enough bottom, if I really truly made up my mind, that I could get free of this. And what was horrifying is I couldn't. And I didn't understand what was wrong with me. And I have a disease called alcoholism this sounds crazy, because it always in the picture of my problem seems to be alcohol. But in a sense, I really don't have an alcohol problem. I have a sobriety problem. I have a problem that really begins where the bottle in the bag ends. A problem that I can't put my finger on. But something vague inside of me always starts to drive me insane. Not the kind of running down the street with your hair on fire insane. This is a subtle thing. It's just subtle feelings that seem to progress of malcontent. You know, you got the best relationship you ever had. You got the best job you ever had. You got the Harley you always wanted. You got everything that you are convinced, the house, everything that's going to make a difference. And there's something about me that the shine of that stuff just wears off very quickly. And I get depressed easily because life just doesn't seem to ring my bell. And it seems like vague, like a long, gray, endless tunnel, this sobriety thing. And I go to meetings, and I sit in meetings 6 months sober, 6 months not drinking, taking nothing. 6 months going to your meetings, and I start looking around me. And I realize something very clear to me, that whatever's wrong with me, God, for God's sakes, it's not the same thing that's wrong with you. Because look at you. You look wonderful. You have great lives. I hate you for it, but you look wonderful. I mean, my God, these people in AA, they quit drinking. They're grateful for everything. I don't even like anything. I don't like me. Nothing's good, really. You guys just, your life works, it clicks, you have great relationships, you laugh a lot. There's nothing funny when I'm sober. There's a heaviness about life. A heaviness. And I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what I was suffering from was a malady of my spirit. Something that I used to drink to treat. And now alcohol doesn't work anymore. And I get sober, and from the moment I get sober, I'm everything Silkworth talks about. He's this restless, irritable, discontent. When it says in our book that selfishness, self-centeredness is the root of my troubles, I was sober years in AA before I understood the nature of the beast. That when I stop drinking, I just get myself right on me. Like that creature in the movie Alien that attaches itself to your face. And all my anxiety about my future and the worries and all the remorse and shame of my past, it all gets right here. And it feels like after a while like somebody's just stepped on the oxygen hose to my soul. And I don't know what's wrong with me. And it feels I get so much of me on me that my spirit is depressed and withdrawn and cut off from life itself. I remember many times getting sober and sitting in meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous as I've done everything I can do and the shines wore off all of it, and sitting there with a feeling and a sense that it's all of you and then there's me. Almost as if some invisible yet impenetrable barrier existed between me and life itself that I could not break through. And I'd try. I'd try with bravado. I'd try with acting cool. I'd try with exaggerating myself and into making myself look better than I was. I'd try with material things. I would try with a lot of stuff. But life just always seemed to be just beyond my fingertips. And what would happen to me is that I just get tired. I get tired of trying. I get tired of the loneliness. And it's that kind of loneliness that you've gone through 3 relationships and you're still alone. And you don't know what that's about. You can be surrounded by people you know intellectually love you, and you're alone. And you don't understand it. And what happens to me is, people in AA used to say this to me in treatment centers. They'd say, well, if you don't do this thing, the obsession to drink will return. It never started out like that for me. My obsession initially was for freedom. I just would get so tired of being in here that I would just, all I want to do is bust out. I just want to come out and play. I don't want to hurt nobody. I don't want to go back to jail. I don't want to lose my place to live. But for God's sakes, I just need some relief. I just need some freedom. And right behind that is a memory that it must be in my cells. The memory of a magical effect from the early days of my drinking, the days when the hook was set. And I could have 4 or 5 drinks and I could be free. 4 or 5 drinks and I could come out and play. 4 or 5 drinks and I could talk to girls. I can't talk to girls sober, but you get me half lit up. Man, I start channeling movie stars and stuff. I mean, I get very plugged in. I mean, I remember one time, junior high school, there was a girl I had this crush on, and it was so bad, not only could I not talk to her, I couldn't even look at her. If she was over in that part of the room, I couldn't even look over there. She'd drive me crazy. And I went to a junior high dance, and I was in there, I went there psyched up, going to ask her to dance. I can't. And I battle with myself, and I go out in the parking lot and run into some buddies that had a pint of 151 rum. Any 151 rum drinkers here? I'll give you a little piece of information. There is no social drinking of 151 rum. That should be on the 20 questions. Did you ever try to drink 151 socially? And I came back into the dance, and I was lit up. And I just kind of floated right over to her with a suave fare beyond anything I could ever I mean, I just walked right up to her with a confidence. I just started talking to her. And I had this out-of-body experience. As I'm talking to her, I'm listening to the words I'm saying to her. And I don't know where they're coming from, but I remember thinking, oh my God, this could work. It was like amazing. It was like a magic. I could get half lit up, and I could play the guitar and sing and do things I could never do. I was too locked up. I could dance. Sober, I cannot dance. You get me lit up, man, the rhythm of the universe moves through me, man. I'm telling you. You get me half lit up, I shoot pool better. Better than I ever shoot up. Better. Smooth. Can't miss. In that zone, you get me half lit up, I'm funny. I'm not funny sober, but you get me half lit up, I crack me up. I'm funny. I can be insightful and deep. I remember one night, about 3 a.m., smoking reefer, drinking wine with a bunch of my buddies, talking about the real intricacies of the universe. It's like I could see the big picture. I remember saying to this guy, this is what Buddha saw. And then what happens? Well, I sober up and I'm back to being me again. And I never, ever liked that much. See, that's the thing I don't understand. And I start getting in trouble from drinking as a young kid. I've always, by the time I was not quite 16 years old, I'm standing before the same juvenile court judge for the 3rd time. And if you'd asked me why I was in that courtroom, I'd have given you a lot of excuses. I'd have told you about snitches. I'd have told you about a society that likes to squash real free thinkers. I told you about how in Europe they can drink at this age. I'd have told you a lot of crap, but the reason I'm in that courtroom is there's something wrong with me and I can't see it. You could have put me on a lie detector and said, Bob, is there any way in the world you could have alcoholism? I would have said absolutely not, and it would say I was telling the truth. But what's wrong with me is every time I go out to party with my buddies, I can't seem to shut her down. I can't find my party off switch. And I don't just now I drink with some guys and party with some guys that'll get drunk, but they'll get drunk and shut her down. I don't just get drunk. I get drunk. And when I'm drunk, there's some stuff seems like a good idea. It's not a good idea. Oh man, and I'm a blackout drinker. Oh, that'll put a fear in you. Any blackout drinkers in here? Oh man, my people. It's hard going through life when other people know more about you than you do. Let me tell you something. I don't know about you. I never did anything good in a blackout. Nobody ever came up to me the next day and said, "Oh, Bob, you were so helpful last night." I get people in my face saying, "You peed in our kitchen. You threw up in our living room. You hit on my wife. You stole my stash. You sideswiped my car. You passed out on our front lawn." The absolute most horrific one. I was shaken in the morning one time, and I was on my way to get down to that state liquor store half hour before they opened, so I could stand in front of the glass windows as the clerks are setting things up and look pathetic enough to hope they'll open early. They never open early. And I'm on my way down there, and a guy cuts into me before I could get to that liquor store, and he says, "Do you know you told everybody last night you beat Bruce Lee in a karate match?" I just wanted to shoot myself. Just shoot me. And what happens is guys like me, we start drinking over our drinking, right? That's like a perpetual motion machine. And I can't stop it. And I don't know and I end up in AA meetings, end up in these well-meaning people send me these treatment places, but I'm the guy that when I start, I can't stop. I have what it talks about in the doctor's opinion, the definitive thing that makes me an alcoholic, regardless of what other drugs I might have done. They used to ask me crazy things in treatment centers when I'm checking in. They'd say, "What's your drug of choice?" Phew. What do you got? I don't know. I drank vanilla extract. One time in jail, I broke open a magic marker and huffed it, just hoping something would happen. The question they should ask me is, what happens to you when you drink alcohol? Regardless of all the other stuff. I know it looks like you got arrested from that, but it's not the caboose that's hurting you. What was the engine? What they should have said is, what happens to you when you drink alcohol, Bob? Have you ever in your whole life, ever been at a bar in some guy's basement, smoking stuff, passing around wine, or been at a bar drinking shots and beers with your buddies for an hour? You ever had the experience, Bob, of having the bartender say to you, "Hey, ready for another one, Bob?" Have you ever sat there and thought to yourself, genuinely, honestly, "No, this is just right, thanks, I'm good"? I had never had that, never once had. It's always one more. I didn't know that I was suffering from an allergic reaction to alcohol that defines alcoholism, regardless of what other stuff I did. It defines me. For a guy like me to pick up a drink of alcohol, it's like having sex with a gorilla. I ain't done till the gorilla's done. I can fancy all night that me and the gorilla are just going to have a dance. No, you're not. No. And so I got two deals going on. And this is what makes alcoholism a terminal illness. Is that once I start, the allergic reaction to alcohol that manifests itself in a phenomenon of craving sets something in motion that I can't get back into the cage. There's a test in our book at the beginning of chapter 3, actually starting at the bottom of the second page of chapter 3, more about alcoholism. And it says, and this was common 25, 30 years ago, you'd see this all the time in AA. You don't see it as much anymore, where old-timers would suggest to newcomers that if you're not sure if you're an alcoholic, go find out. Go over to the nearest bar. The book says, try to drink and stop abruptly. And the book says, now this is 1939, the book says it might be worth a bad case of the jitters to get a true knowledge of your condition. Well, in our today's society, has upped the ante a little bit on that one. But if you're an alcoholic of my type and you have the mind of a chronic alcoholic, and I love the line in the book where it says the alcoholic's problem lies mainly in his mind. It's a mind that never ever will allow me to see what everybody else can see. It will never allow me to see what's going on really. It's almost like there's a veil that comes down and I just see my own justifications and rationalizations. And if I could have seen the truth, I would realize that that's not a good test. Let's imagine that you've come around AA for a while, and these people have been telling you have this physical allergy to alcohol, this phenomenon of craving, and you think, I know I get a little out of line, I do, but I don't know, I'm not sure. Maybe it's more problem than drugs and alcohol. I'm not really sure here. I don't think I'm alcoholic. And you go to take the test. Okay, now you got to go down to this bar. You're going to go in there and you're going to have 2 drinks, that's it. Now you got to shut her down. You can't smoke nothing, take nothing. 2 drinks, that's it. Well, if you're like me, about halfway through that second drink, it's going to become very apparent to me that this is a bad test day. I didn't know that game was on. Oh my God, I can't leave now, not with that game on. Oh, if some girl would walk in and light me up, I'd think, oh my God, that could be her. I got to have a drink with her. Joe would walk in. Joe's always got something good to smoke. I can't leave now. I got to have a drink with Joe. Bad test day. And I never understood. I never got it. How alcoholism was punking me out. How I would, somewhere in the middle of the first or second drink, somewhere in there is the feeling from the alcohol started to come over me. I would break out in this irresistible yearning for more of that feeling, and my mind, it would take my mind hostage, and all my abilities to justify and rationalize and minimize. And here's how it punks me out. Even though I swore to myself I was only going to have 2 because I look what happened to me last night. Is it uses my own mind against me until I think that it's my idea to have the 3rd one, and it looks like a good idea to me. And then the 3rd one makes me feel and think and see very clearly that the 4th one is appropriate. And I didn't know that was a result of an allergic reaction to alcohol that was taking my mind hostage. I didn't know that. I didn't know that I was satisfying a craving beyond my mental control. I had no idea. Now, if that was all there was to alcoholism, then we would only have an acute condition, but Silkworth says we're chronic alcoholics. And the difference between an acute condition, if your problem's just drinking, then I got a 1-step program of recovery for you. It'll change your life. Don't drink. But you might have something else wrong with you. And that just about killed me, and I didn't understand it, is that this thing that overcomes me when I stop drinking. And what started happening to me is that over time is in the progressive nature of this disease is the fun starts bleeding out of it. And I don't understand. And I feel like one of those guys with his finger in the dike trying to shore up something that's coming at him, and I can't shore it up. And it's funny in this progressive nature how in the beginning, in the early days, my teenage days, and even into my very early 20s, there was a tremendous amount of fun, man. It lit up. A little bit of problems. And as the disease progressed, the fun seemed to bleed out and the problems got worse and worse and worse. And I don't know what's going on with me. It's almost like every time I go out to drink, it's like spinning a roulette wheel. And in the early days, on that roulette wheel was cool stuff like getting laid, drag racing, playing music with guys, drag strips. I mean, all kinds of just neat stuff. A little bit of throwing up occasionally would be on that wheel. There'd be a little jail time occasionally on that wheel. But for the most part, I'd spin that wheel. It's coming up, party, 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 party. And then as the disease progressed, it's like some hideous force is screwing with the wheel. Putting on things like wet pants, blackouts, more jail time, loss of loved ones, loss of self-respect, self-loathing, remorse. And at the end of my drinking, I'm spinning that wheel thinking, oh my God, there's got to be a party in here somewhere. I know it. And it's coming up horrible stuff. I remember my second to last drunk. I was in this halfway house, and it was winter time. And the reason I'm in there is, well, I got a couple reasons. One is I'm out of money. And also it's winter, and I got no place to live. So I go into treatment for the winter. Back in the Northeast, it's cold in the wintertime. Some people go to Bermuda in the winter. I go to treatment. I mean, that's what I do. So I'm in this place, and I'm hanging in there, because by this time, I know that this stuff is ruining me. I mean, I'm not stupid. I mean, I got guys that I went to high school with that own homes and have wonderful lives and marriages and stuff. And I'm in a halfway house, and when I'm not in a halfway house, I'm sleeping on guys' couches. You know, I get it. I'm not an idiot. And I'm in this place, and I have made up my mind again that I'm never going to touch that stuff. And I am the guy it talks about in our book when it says lack of power is my dilemma. The guy that talks about when it says there comes a time, Bob, when you will have no mental defense against the first one. I know you think you do right now as you're checking into the treatment center. You think you're done, don't you? It hurts so bad. There's going to come a time, the book says, when I will be absolutely unable to bring into my mind, into my consciousness, the memory of the suffering, humiliation, the feelings that had me swearing to myself and meaning it, that I'm never going to touch again. There comes the time. And there came the time, and I picked up a drink because I can't stop. I can't stop from picking it up, and then I can't stop from going forward once I pick it up. And I got thrown out of there because I'm that kind of drunk. I know guys that are able to hide their drinking for long periods of time. Let me tell you something. I pick up a drink, everybody knows I'm drinking. Because I'm a mess, like quick. And I got thrown out of there, and I'm living in the park, and it's pathetic. And I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't know what's wrong with me, and I don't understand that it's alcoholism. I don't think it is alcoholism, because I quit drinking and there's something else wrong with me. And by this time, I'd been to some of the greatest therapists on the planet. My mother worked for mental health. She was a therapist, and she got me in to seek. I used to go take the train and just go up to New York City, and I was in therapy with Albert Ellis, the founder of rational emotive therapy. I was in therapy with Dr. Silverman, who was a contemporary and studied with Fritz Perls and Alan Watts and those guys. I mean, these were brilliant men. I identify with Roland Hazard's story in the book about going to the highest thing on the food chain for therapy and human power and failing. I understand that. And I tried everything, and I don't think it's alcoholism, but I don't know what it is. It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know, except that I can't go on like this. It wouldn't have been so bad, if even though I went to jail and I'd lost everything, and sometimes I feel pathetic and I go on crying jags and I feel sorry for myself. I think I could have rolled with all of that if I could have had an hour of fun once in a while. But at the end of my drinking, I can't get the hour. I can't capture that anymore. I remember going on this drunk, and it was so pathetic. I went there with an excitement. I'd been in this halfway house, and my God, I'm cleaning the bathrooms, and I'm going to those stupid AA meetings, and I'm working at a job with people I don't like. I mean, I've been a really good sport up to now, for God's sakes. And I don't want to hurt nobody. I just want to get some relief. And I remember starting the run off in this bar, and I hope I never forget this experience of walking in there with a tremendous amount of elation and excitement that I'm going to get lit up. And then I started drinking, and I started sinking into this abyss of self-pity. As I sat there and looked at all the people in the bar that were laughing and shooting pool and dancing and having fun. And I remember, like it broke my heart. I remember looking at them and thinking, what's wrong with me? Because I could remember when the magic was there. I was that guy. What happened to me? And it was like a veil lifted, and I could see the truth. And the truth is, Bob, it's kind of been like this for a while now, hasn't it? And I can't even put into words the despair that sunk over me as I realized something that was unacceptable, that made me think, why should I even continue to live? And what that realization is, Bob, you can drink yourself to death, but you're never going to get back that ease and comfort, that connected feeling, that magical feeling. You're never going to get it back. And I felt like I was dying right then and there. And I didn't know that a series of events would happen to me, and I would end up in an institution for a while, and then I would end up on what was to be my last run. And on that run, I don't know how, I was trying to stay sober because I had prison time hanging over my head, and I caved, as I always did, on this desperate need for relief. See, I'm the guy, I don't really want to change. I want relief. The problem with seeking relief is that it always wears off, doesn't it? It always wears off. There's a vacancy that comes right behind it. And I don't want to change. And I'm dying of alcoholism because I don't even understand, because of this ego that has gotten so huge that it's killing me. And it's funny how I wouldn't have thought that didn't even think I had an ego, because I had no self-esteem. And I didn't know that they were at opposites. I didn't know that I was the guy that fit the old adage, you can always tell an alcoholic, you just can't tell them much. There was a great psychiatrist, nailed all of us, I think, that have chronic alcoholism. He studied us for years and years and years. And he said the reason that most of these people don't get any better and they don't change, even though some of them will stay abstinent for decades, but they don't change, is that their egos are so dominant that they have an absolute inability to listen to anyone in order to hear anything new. They can only listen to see how they're already right. And if you're like that, you're a closed system. And if you're a closed system, nothing new gets in. And if nothing new gets in, nothing changes. And if nothing changes, nothing changes. That's why alcoholism sometimes feels like you're stuck. You can see what needs to happen, you just can't get there. I just can't get there. It's an abyss that I seem to be dying in between who I really am and who I know I need to be. So what happens with most of us is we become pretend people. We pretend we're okay. We pretend we're not afraid. We pretend we fit. And dying inside. I got an ego that doesn't care about anything except being right and looking good. It doesn't care if it kills me, as long as after I'm dead everybody realizes how right Bob had been. I'll tell you a little story. Now, some of you identify with this, you're in trouble. I ended up in an emergency room. And I ended up in emergency rooms frequently because I'm an idiot. And I think I'd put my fist through a plate glass window and I was bleeding. I couldn't get it to stop. And it ended up in this emergency room where they sewed me up and x-rayed me. And I had to sit there and wait for the x-ray results to come back. And well, now I've been there a couple hours, so I've kind of sobered up in this emergency room. And I'm sitting in the waiting room waiting for the results of the x-rays, and there's this rack of medical pamphlets. You know, stuff like diabetes and heart condition. There was this one pamphlet that got my attention. It said 7 warning signs of cancer. So I'm kind of sobered up a little bit, and I grab that pamphlet and I start reading it. And one of the symptoms was continued unexplained bleeding. I'm reading that and I'm thinking, oh my God, I throw up a little blood once. Matter of fact, from time to time, I'm kind of bleeding out of both ends. And I thought, oh my God, I got cancer. And then it was like an epiphany. It was all of a sudden I realized, oh my God, it's metastasizing to I have a brain tumor. Oh, it explained volumes of my life right there. I mean, the reason I do weird things and can't remember them, the reason I go on these emotional roller coasters, the reason I fly off the handle at people and then feel embarrassed later, the reason I get so withdrawn. Oh my God, I have a brain tumor. And I had this fantasy, I could picture that one day they're going to pull me off the streets and they're going to realize I have a brain tumor. They're going to take me to the cancer hospital, and of course they're going to have to notify my mother and father, who don't even speak to me anymore, and they're going to realize that how wrong they'd been about me. Oh my God, Bob, we thought you were a bum. We didn't know you had a brain tumor. Oh, and then all my ex-girlfriends are going to find out, and they're going to come running over there to, properly ashamed of themselves, to beg my forgiveness. Now, I'm going to die from this, but it was sweet. I ended up in a hospital and for alcoholism. And the guy's talking to me about it. I said, Doc. I said, I got to tell you, I got a brain tumor. And he's looking at me skeptical. I said, no, really? I know, Doc. Really, trust me. I know. I've had it checked out, which I never did. I kind of lied to him. And so he gave me a whole battery of tests, and he came back to me, and he said, you don't have a brain tumor. You have a bleeding ulcer and a hemorrhoid. I wanted a second opinion. It's like my ego would rather be dead and have everybody wrong about me and me right than be able to live and be free. Now, if you identify with that on any level, you do not have a high mental health quotient. It's pathetic, isn't it, that in the last days of drinking we have those pathetic, where people feel sorry for us, fantasies. And anybody here ever, besides myself, have rehearsed deathbed speeches? Oh, and I bet you yours are just as good as mine were. Oh, tear-jerking stuff. Amazing stuff. It doesn't look like alcoholism. It doesn't look like alcoholism. And it's alcoholism. Every bit of it. Every bit of it. And I didn't know that. I didn't know what was wrong with me. And in my last run, I came to in the park, and I was so pathetic. There's no more fun in this. And I drink, and I feel sorry for myself, and I don't eat. I'm not against eating. I'm just not going to eat up my drinking money. You know what I'm saying? You get a bottle of wine or McDonald's. McDonald's loses every time because I need the medicine. My whole life has got down to let's get the most amount of blot bob out for the least amount of money. And I'm pathetic. And I come to in this park. I don't know how many days into this, my last run I was. I don't know if it was 2, 3 days, 4. I don't know. It's all very vague. And I come to and I'm sick, and I get those bad tremors back again. And I just come to sometimes, and I just sit and I grab myself and rock back and forth, and like I want to jump out of my skin. And all the shame and the remorse and the self-pity is on me. And I can't shut my head off. And I sat there and I remembered the words of the doctor that gave me the complete physical workup. And he'd said to me something that should have been good news. I was in my 20s, and he said, "Kid, you're young enough and physically healthy enough, you bounce back quick." He said, "You could probably go on drinking like this for 5 more years before it actually killed you." And I remember sitting in that park that morning thinking, 5 more years of this? No, sir. No, sir. I can't do 5 more days of this. And I got to the place it talks about in our book where it says we get to a place, if you live long enough, where you can't imagine life with it anymore, not like this. And you can't imagine life without it either, because abstinence feels like I'm doing time. And it says we'll be at the jumping off place and we'll wish for the end. And that's exactly what happened. And I made the decision that morning to kill myself. And this is not looking for pity, a suicide attempt. This is, I want out. I want to make this stop. And I got a bottle of wine for courage, and I went to a bridge, and something saved my life that day that I never would have suspected. It was something that I'd always kept secret. It was something that I really always hated about myself. And what that is that I've always secretly been afraid. And I covered it up with bravado and violence and anger. But the truth is, I've always been scared to death. And that fear kept me from jumping. And listen to me, I am not afraid of dying. But the problem is, you can't drink yourself to death. It just takes it's like it's like being kicked to death by rabbits. It just goes on and on and on. I mean, by the time it kills you, you've wished you were dead for a long time. I mean, that scares me. But what the fear that saved my life is I'm afraid, based on my track record, that I'm going to screw up the suicide like I've screwed up everything else in my life, and I'm not going to die, and I'm going to end up in a charity ward, paralyzed from the neck down, and I lay there sober for 50 years as my head tells me daily what a worthless piece of crap I am, and members of Alcoholics Anonymous parade their newcomers through the room, and I get to hear say, "This is what happens to you when you don't work our beautiful 12 steps." And I'm paralyzed. I can't even give them the one-finger salute. I'm stuck here. Our book says that we get to a place where there's nothing left. We come to believe in the hopelessness and futility of our life as we'd been living it. And there's nothing left. See, I had hope before. I had hope that maybe I can jumpstart the party. Maybe this relationship will make a difference. Maybe this new medication. Maybe this job. I had hope. Maybe this therapist. But I was at the point where there was truly, truly, truly nothing left. When it says in the ABCs that no human power, you know how guys like me accept that? Because we tried everything on the radar. I mean, the great delusion in the book is that we're victims of. The book says that we're victims of the delusion that we can wrest happiness and satisfaction out of this world if we only manage well. You know why that's a delusion? Because nobody on the planet, no demographic has ever spent more money, more time, more obsessive energy, and more focus on making themselves satisfied and happy as we have. And how's that working for you? I'm in Alcoholics Anonymous. Absolute failure at resting happy. See, I can't manage. This is what confused me about the second half of step one. I thought that meant that I couldn't make things happen in the world. No, it's I can't manage the inside stuff where I really live. I'm the guy on page 52. I'm prone to misery and depression. I can't make a living really and truly. No matter how much money I make, it's not enough. I have this vacancy that drives at me. I'm depressed most of the time. I'm lonely and I don't know why, and I can't change it, and I've tried everything. I can't make myself okay enough sober to stay sober. And not from not trying. I mean, for God's sakes, I think if any of us could have fixed ourselves with the effort we put into it, we'd have done it. We'd have done it. I mean, I don't know about you, but the only thing I'm concerned with is me. I wake up wondering about me. Wake up concerned with me. I think about my finances and my sex life and what you think of me and my job and me. And if I could have fixed me, I'd have done it, and I'd have done it. But I couldn't do it. And in 1978, I came off that run. I failed suicide attempt and ended up in a detox in Las Vegas, Nevada, almost 2,000 miles away from where I started. I wasn't trying to go to Las Vegas. I was trying to go to California. Because I thought in California I can survive a winter, because the winters in Northeast are tough. I thought maybe I'd survive another winter. The police wouldn't find me. I could hide out in Venice Beach or somewhere. And I got to Las Vegas. By the time I got there, I was so sick I ended up in this detox. And you know, the Buddhists say that when the student's ready, the teachers appear. Our book says that we get to the place where nothing's left. I mean, when you think about it objectively, if drinking is horrible, and you've done everything to roll back to the party and you've failed, and not drinking is horrible, and you've done everything from therapy to medication to changing everything you can do, and it ain't no good. Abstinence feels like you're doing time. And you can't even kill yourself. I mean, what the hell's left except Alcoholics Anonymous, for God's sakes? It really is the last house on the block. And it was for me. And I remember sitting there in this meeting, in this detox, after they cleaned me up and got the IVs out of me and got me stabilized, sitting there and listening to men and women share their own experience. And for the first time in years of being around AA, I could hear you. I guess I had just enough of me kicked out of me that I could finally hear someone. And I remember it like it was yesterday, listening to the guy that was become my sponsor tell his story, and sitting there and I'm nodding my head and I'm thinking, my God, I'm like these people. And that gave me some hope that I was afraid to hope. Because when you secretly hate yourself, it's hard to hope anything good for yourself. But the hope was, and I'd been watching these guys, and they laughed a lot. They had great lives. They looked like they were having a better time sober than I had when alcohol worked. And the hope was, maybe if I got this guy to sponsor me and did everything he suggested, maybe what happened to them could happen to me. And I did that. And I got this guy to be my sponsor, and I got a home group, and I got out of that institution. I started going to 15 meetings a week because I was scared. Because when I'm not with you, I'm alone with me, and that is not good. because I got ahead. I knew that from the beginning. I always felt better when I was with you than I did when I was alone with me. And so I threw myself at Alcoholics Anonymous. And this guy that I got to be my sponsor, I told him, I said, if you sponsor me, I'll do whatever you tell me to do. Let me tell you something if you're new. Don't say that lightly, because they got stuff they want you to do. I mean, some of them, it sounds like they've been waiting for years for somebody to say that. And they just tell you, one of the first things the guy told me, he says, we want you to start doing 12-step work. He wants you to start, they're starting a new meeting in the state penitentiary. He wants you to sign up. Back in those days, you didn't have to have any period of time. You could sign up. They want you to sign up for the state penitentiary. We want you to get on the 12-step list. We want you to take meetings back into the detox you came out of. We want you to take meetings over here to the Sam House. We want you to do all this stuff. We want you to go on 12-step calls. And I remember saying to him, now I'd had a lot of therapy. I had been a therapist at one time. I was a very good alcohol and drug abuse therapist right up to the day I lost my job for being drunk on the job. I remember saying to the guy, because of all this therapeutic background, I remember saying to the guy, well...
That ought to work. Okay, Chris. Well, good evening, everybody. My name's Sandy Beach, and I'm an alcoholic.
I understand what you're saying, but don't you think I should work on me for a while? And he says, work on you? You've done quite enough of that. Stop it. Stop it. Go help somebody. And he was right. I had done quite enough of that. And the miracle of my life was that I did what they told me to do. And I'm still doing it to this day. A guy, and I could sum up the whole deal of the last 32 and a half years by something a guy told me when I was brand new. He cornered me after a meeting, and you got to understand, I don't believe in God. I mean, that came later as a result of taking certain actions that God became real for me. But when I was new, I'm a half-assed atheist, really. And this guy says to me, he says, well, you got to take step 3. And I look at step 3 on the board. It says, made a decision to turn your will and your life over to the care of God, not God. Oh, God. See, I'm afraid of God. See, I'm the kind of guy, if I just suspect you don't like me, I'm going to not like you first. And at the pit of my stomach, I knew I ain't good enough for God. You know what I mean? I just felt so corrupt and so stained. And so I'm a little bit like this. But the people in AA had me taking certain action. They had me praying. They said, we don't care if you don't believe in God, just pray. Just pray. I started doing this. And this guy, Joe, says, you need to take step 3. And I said, Joe, I said, listen, Joe, I can't. I'm trying here. I'm praying, but the truth is, I don't believe in God. I don't understand God. And Joe says, you don't have to believe in God to take step 3. I said, Joe, that's kind of what it says. He says, listen, kid, trust me. If you'll turn your will and your life over to this chair, and he points to a chair in the Alano Club, he says, I guarantee you an instant miracle. I said, okay, Joe, I turn my will and my life over the chair. What's the miracle? He says, well, the miracle would be your life's no longer in the hands of an idiot. And I didn't even get mad. I just stood there and went, yeah, that'd be right. Yeah. Yeah, because if you'd followed me around and watched me as some of the loved ones had seen me over the years, and maybe your loved ones had seen you, whoever's watching us would easily come to the conclusion that whoever's making decisions for this person is out to destroy them. And yet, isn't it funny that it doesn't look that way inside the alcoholic mind? I had a guy, when I was just about a couple years sober, get in my face one time. This guy passed away about 25 years ago from cancer. And he said something to me I've never forgotten. He got in my face, and I like this guy. And he said, listen, kid, he says, I'm going to tell you some stuff that if you buy, it's going to save you a lot of grief and a lot of pain. He said, I want you to know that if you're explaining something, if you're defending something, if you're justifying something or rationalizing something, kid, I want you to know you're wrong. because you never have to explain, defend, justify, or rationalize what's right. And those words have stuck with me because I got a justifying mind. And the minute it starts, it's like, And that's why the importance of the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous is to lift the veil so I can start to see me the way the world has seen me. You know, when you do the fourth step out of the book, and especially you get to This Was Our Course, and page 66 and 67, and you really legitimately do what it says on those pages, what happens is it changes us and changed me so dramatically, because all of a sudden I know exactly why they rejected me. My God, I'm looking at it through their eyes. I'd have rejected me too. I know exactly why I lost all those. See, and from that moment on, I could never, ever be a victim again, because you start to know the truth. Because I start seeing me from out here rather than from the stories I tell myself in my head. You know, we have a book in Alcoholics Anonymous. It's called As Bill Sees It. I think Al-Anon has a more legit book, Lois Remembers. I mean, we're the storytellers. I bet you there's people in here that have cases built against people that have had these cases built for 20 years. There's probably nothing left of reality in the case anymore, as you've tweaked it over the years to make yourself more and more right. And we're big on being wrong here. And if you're new and you can't stand being wrong, you're going to have a hard time here. Because the ego deflation is constantly looking to see how my perception and my judgments are possibly wrong. Is to continually be willing to look at things from other-centered points of view rather than self-centered points of view. To start to view God's kids the way God views them. See, God, I know something. I know God's crazy about us. I suspect at times He has no taste. But I know He's crazy about us. And every once in a while I can see His kids a little bit like what He sees them. And that is beautiful. And it doesn't last because of the nature of the beast. So I'm an everyday member of Alcoholics Anonymous. You have allowed Bob to survive Bob. And if I live to be 1,000 years old, I will owe you. Thank you for my life.